Okay, next we have a funding table, and that is a important concept to get your head around because you're lending, you're borrowing for the project, and your bank's lending is going to depend on this funding table. And what this funding table allows you to do is that you can distinguish between your soft costs and hard costs, because especially when you've got a bank trying to borrow you money, they may not consider all the money that you've already spent with consultants. They may not consider things like stamp duty that they consider that you need to pay anyway. And if you're from Australia, if you've got GST, they will not include that as part of the cost. So that is something that you need to pay. So suddenly people think that, oh, my total development cost is going to be $1 million, and then they think that the bank will lend them 700,000, only to realize that the bank would only considers 900,000 to be their total cost, and then will only lend 70% of 900,000, not $1 million. And suddenly you're out of pocket and you don't know what's going to happen because you don't have enough money, because you got into the development thinking that you'll be able to borrow 700, but suddenly you can only borrow 600, and then you're short 100K, and then people panic, and a lot of developers panic, and then they've got no choice but to get out of it or sell the project as it is, because the bank won't lend you that money. So this is why I included this funding table in here, because it does not matter the size of the development that you're doing. This you will come across this with almost every lender, unless of course you already own the property, you've been sitting on it for so long, and you don't really care. But that funding table concept is going, you will be faced with it. And what this funding table allows you to do is that it allows you to say what you are going to contribute as a developer's equity, which is right here, and what the bank will consider as a as part of hard costs to have bank's total development costs. Because you might think, I paid X amount to the agent to list everything, to rent the property. Let's say you rented the property out while you were going through the development. So those costs to rent them out and everything, bank may not consider them as part of the cost for the project. They might only consider your construction cost, the cost of the project. So you need to be aware of all of these things, and a lot of people don't know about this concept. A lot of developers that I come across, and even people I see trying to teach this stuff, have no idea that this would happen to them, or they don't have a mechanism to be able to calculate all of that. So I needed to make sure that this feasibility allowed you to do it. So when it comes to funding table, you've got your land acquisition cost. It automatically picks up 30% based on the finance cost that you put in on land, because you've already said that you'll be able to borrow 70% right here. So that means your developer's share for land acquisition is going to be 30%. Now this line is blank because that is for GST. If you haven't got GST, we'll keep going and we'll come back to the GST implications on this whole development after I finish this without GST. So we got stamp duty again, the ad valorem tax, which is levied on top of it. Bank will not consider that as your total development cost. At least in Australia, they don't. But if you know that, if you know a bank that they will, just say zero, because that means you're contributing zero, and the bank is going to consider that as part of the total cost. So you'll see that 66 grand will move here, and you can continue doing your developments. But in this scenario, we'll just leave that as that money will be paid by the developer. You've got legals on acquisition. Now these may be considered as part of the total development cost. So in this scenario, I'm going to make it zero. And then we've got construction costs. Usually all construction costs, if you've got a signed contract with the builder, they will consider that, or the bank will hire their own quantity surveyor and use that figure as whichever is lower. So if you have a lower contract, let's say 1.5 million with a builder already in place, bank will consider that So long as the quantity surveyor that the bank hires to calculate all the cost of construction comes within 5% range of your total number. But even then, they will go with a lower number. But if that number is too big, they will stick with the number that the quantity surveyor came up with. So we know that these are part of our hard costs. So construction contingency is also part of the hard costs. So consultants, so if you've got consultants now, in here, there could be a scenario where you already got a permit and you've already spent 44 grand, but the bank says, look, this is a good development. We can allow you to add these costs, which is you were trying to get the working drawings done or the construction ready drawings done with your consultants and so on. So this could be, you paying 50% or you paying 60%, and the banks allowed you to put 40%. Whoops, I was supposed to be 60. And the banks allowed you to to add those costs as part of the total cost. Your stat fees and contribution in Australia, I know for sure, the banks will not add that as part of the total cost for the project based on which they are going to lend you the money. So you've got agents, residential, commercial, and so on. So these agents will again not be part of it because the agent's commission comes out as soon as the person you have sold your unit to pays you the money. So that never actually hits your bottom line. But never actually hits your account because it's taken out right at the source. So they may not consider this because what we are doing here, we're trying to inflate the total cost of the development that the bank will consider as the total cost and then lend you money based on that total. So you need to understand this thoroughly. Then you've got commercial and so on. So I'll leave that out. I've left all of those things out. Marketing expenses, bank might consider it. So you can put 0 over there and, try it. But if they don't, then you need to put in a percentage that you are going to fund. That means that money is coming. That money is required to do the project irrespective. The question we're trying to answer here is that who's going to be paying it? Whether bank will consider it as part of the total cost and lend you money based on that, or will it be coming straight out of your pocket? So that is what we are trying to consider here. Then we've got other selling costs, we've got legals on settlement, we've got leasing expenses, we've got miscellaneous closing costs and so on. So stuff like this, which are your closing costs and everything, the bank would consider this because it is happening right at the end of the project. And then you've got miscellaneous costs, land interest or holding period. So let's say you're going to be holding this interest now. So this is the time that you've already held it. So you are with lender one, for example, and then for construction you went to another lender. So that money that you already paid for in interest for 8 months of holding, the new bank that's going to lend you money for construction is not going to consider that as part of your total cost because that is something you've already incurred. So you need to know, why are we doing this total? We're doing this total to get a true picture of what money is going to come out of your pocket as a developer. So then we've got finance during construction. This is always considered as part of the total cost. And that's where this feasibility is 100% unique because it goes into a loop to be able to come up with this number. So all this is all very iterative and so on. So leave that as 0. You've got other income. Now that other income is basically an income that you're making in this project. So that takes into account all of this. So it takes into account your developer's equity and reduces that. So don't worry, it's all been taken care of because that's a positive number and all of these are your costs and so on. So that's how you get a funding table. So although your total expense to do this development is 3.8 million, but you'll see that the bank is only considering 3.1 million as the total amount of money that they will consider as the total development cost, because in the next video will calculate what is the maximum amount that we can borrow based on this number, because because you need to come up with that number. So now you know that 650,000 of that you have to come up with this. So and in the next video I'll show you what an effective LVR is as well.